Hello, my name is Carlos Delgado, and this is my final reflective video for English 1302 class with instructor Bonnie Garcia. So, for this final reflective video, we were asked to answer three of these seven research, um, not research, but processes questions, from which I'll choose research processes, writing processes, and finally, number seven, peer feedback processes. So first off, I want to start off with research processes and what I learned from this semester. Um, from um, Mainly, what I learned is to know how to identify your trustworthy sources out of your not not very not very not very trustworthy sources. And well, we asked our instructor, well, how can we tell this from that? And she told us it's depending on where you are searching for that. For example, if you go on into Google and just look for example, my research project was about film critics. Well, you will not find that much of um, educational sources you can use to mainly base off your research paper. So what she showed us was this database that we have access to, the UTRGB database library, in which over here we could type anything we want and it will actually bring out these results. We'll have journals, newspaper articles, theses, magazine articles, books, in which you could get one or two results. One of them it's going into this type of link, and it will take us to where this book is located, which is located here on campus. We have to go all the way to the library to actually get this book uh, from well, it doesn't say in this one, but it would always say like a shelf number and a shelf letter. Or we could stumble across this one that says online and will take us into this type of articles that are fully available online, are from some page to some page of a huge of a bigger journal, which actually I used this article for my research. Um, So that's something very important. Another thing that I want to point out, it's the .edu, the um, the domain of where you get these sources. .com, .net, .org are not that trustful compared to .edu, which is actually dedicated to educational purposes, educational papers, educational journals, edu- sorry, educational information. Another thing from our research processes that I don't actually have it here digitalized was an elaboration of a primary research, which was something I had never done before. And actually, what it meant was to go out there and get the results firsthand, like go and see your results. So, for example, for my research, I actually performed an experiment in which I had three subjects that helped me. I set them into a controlled environment. I was controlling the whole experiment, and I got results out of it. And thanks to those results, thanks to that primary research, I got to link various of these secondary articles to that. The, I mean, of these secondary sources to that primary source I could of that to that primary source I actually investigated about. So primary research is really important because it helps you get the actual the actual resource the actual results out in the field of, hey, what about of what is your what is your how does your question really affects certain type of audience, or how can you actually make that research to contribute your secondary sources and also contribute to your research paper, which eventually that's really helpful. um, then moving on from research processes that I learned, I'm going into writing processes, which is what certain template I use to start writing. First of all, I want to point out that, well, my first example is this scrap sheets. This scrap sheets on the beginning helped me a lot to go over my go over my first draft. Why? Because we were asked to do six of these. Six, six. I mean, I'm sorry, four of these for each of our secondary sources. This one actually, Elias Berg, Joshua, and Stephen M. Shugan, film critics, influences of or predators. It's from this one, Joshua Eliasberg and Shugan, film critics. So you'll get your citation over here. You'll say what your citation is. This is an MLA citation, and this whole paper will ask you for different things in its different boxes. For example, currency. What is the timeliness of the information? This asks for whether the article was an old one. It's really new, so you can get like sort of like a what type or how current is this information. Relevance. How relevant is this information for your actual research question? Then we move up to authority, which is how credible is the source of this information, which was something I was talking about in research processes. Also, look at this box where it specifically asks for the domain .com, .edu, .gob, .org, or .net. Then we move up to accuracy, how reliable and truthful and correct is the information. Whether th- this will this will help you whether you should really trust the source if there's like spelling or grammar errors, if there was some sort of emotion from the author, or for example, if the information given by the author in the secondary source is supported by evidence. And finally, well, second to last, our purpose, which is what are the reasons the information exists. What is this, a fact, an opinion, or propaganda? If it's opinion or propaganda, then it's not very likely to be a good source rather than facts, because facts are what will help you develop your research paper. And for example, political. Are there any political, ideological, cultural, religious, institutional, or personal biases? Of course, if a a source is really devoid of everything of actually this ideologies, it will most likely be a really trustworthy paper. And now we go on into rhetorical notes, in which you could write down all the notes you wanted. Um, we throughout the whole semester we categorize the our sources through this uh, five different sections: situation, claims, evidence, audience, and purpose. And actually having this ones organized on the beginning, like before starting your research paper, it will come very helpful, because when doing your first draft, you can actually go back to these notes. You can look at the claims, look at the evidence. If you forgot something, you can go back here, and this will actually help you out in more ways than you could know. For example, if I wanted to, let's say, I'm going a little bit forward, but let's say if I wanted to link this secondary source to this secondary source, maybe I'll forget, like, how can I do a transition for this? You can go back to this, reread the situations and how the situations between this crap sheet and the other crap sheet from the other secondary source can link together. And okay, so right, sorry, moving on, and from this example to the next, this is a mapping we have to do for our sources. So, um, basically, everyone choose their own type of mapping. I like to do my mapping into separating into differences and similarities. Why? Because it's easier for me to talk about in one side about what's the author's differences from other authors, what claims are not supporting each other, and similarities. It will help me organize. Hey, this author supports this idea, and even in this research paper and in these secondary sources, I got to see different authors. I got from, let's say, in my secondary source, authors were talking about my other secondary sources actors. Like, for example, Basura and Check Gravity mentioned Elias Berg research in their articles. They supported this this type of mapping. I actually never done it before, but I think that this would help me a lot into differentiating um, like pros and cons from it, which we have to actually have a mental idea in how can this affect our research paper and our research question. Um, so moving on into my next example was I'm sorry. Moving on into my next writing process, not research. I'm sorry, writing process. It's this. I have research paper. So I know uh, some of you will ask, well, how does this help you in your writing process? Well, um, personally, I'm a I procrastinate a lot. I leave things to the last days. But actually, our instructor, Bonnie Garcia, motivate us into doing this half research paper a whole month ago. I can even confirm this, that I uploaded this on March 28th. It's April 30th. This was a month prior, and already had half my research paper with it, which is sometimes the final project you got to turn in for this English 1301 and 1302 classes. But what it had helped me a lot, well, we can see the template of it. Introduction, everyone has introductions. Introducing my problem, and then start talking about secondary sources. This was something I didn't took into consideration until our instructor told us to do it. Introducing your secondary sources into the first pages of your research paper helps a lot, because when you're later developing your discussion, your final discussion, or either your conclusion, and you want to citate one of the secondary sources, you can actually go back and look at what you've written down over here and over here, and actually link those ideas really clearly and really and really easily. Um, Also, this helps you a lot to realize what information you have in your research paper. Actually, to do this, I mean, what information you have from your secondary sources that could help your research paper. Actually, this, for example, can be pretty easily done by going back into the crap sheets, looking at all the information it has, and actually writing about it and describing it more into more detail. And now that this is my last example from writing processes, I want to go into my final question, which if we go back here, it's some peer feedback processes. Throughout my year and a half, no, my 2 years in college, I didn't have a lot of feedback from my peers, and this was kind of good, to actually have feedback from my my classmates. Because, for example, we had a we had an activity in which we had to find something in our research paper. This is the final research paper, so the actual problem I had with it will not show up because this is already fixed for its final draft. But for example, let's go into this comment box. I typed down that I really didn't find a way to connect this source to another to another source, like to do a nice little transition into them. So we were asked to go into different research papers through the whole classroom and type and write about how can we help how can we help other people with their problems. I had this problem, and for example, here, my classmate Jocelyn and Bianca Garcia helped me develop my my help me fix this problem I had with my sources. For example, Ja, Sam helped me, for example, saying your research question is how does movie critiques influence the afterthoughts of an audience? From your source, it is clear that critics can affect audience opinions. And it says, for example, emphasize on the fact that your secondary sources claim success in film awards. So that really helped me out when rewriting this. So I wanted to focus into the claims of success in film awards. That's what I did here. Which claims that I found on this article and this other article that had claims into success in film awards. For once, that helped me a lot. And for example, the other problem I had was in my conclusion. I thought my conclusion was really weak. It didn't had a concrete argument to finish up this research paper. And again, Sam and Bianca Garcia helped me out. And now Bianca Garcia points out that I didn't mention who my audience was. And this was a recurrent problem throughout my whole research paper. I didn't mention my audience. And thanks to this feedback, this helped me a lot to actually revise the whole thing, rewrite some parts, and be more direct into who I want this research paper, like what audience I want this research paper to be read by. And so, um, I realized all of this feedback helped a lot. And one more piece of feedback was this, which we actually got to ask a question to our instructor, and she will help us out into how to get this this problem we had um, solved for our final draft. What I realized from peer feedback, from feedback from our peers actually, is that you have to accept your their negative and positive reviews from it. You can't just go around thinking that your opinion is it's the only one right. You need a second opinion. You need an opinion of someone that is other than yourself, because you can think that you have the best research paper you ever done, and it will have inconsistencies. It will always have inconsistencies. It will not be perfect. That's why you need feedback. Feedback helps you solve those, helps you solve those inconsistencies into getting an actual research paper that is close, because I'm not going to say perfect, but close to perfect, or close to what the instructor close to what the instructor is asking. And for my final feedback example, we this again, like the primary research that I talked a while back ago. I don't have this digitalized, but it's an activity we did in the classroom. So our our professor asked us to get into little groups. She arranged the groups, and each one of us in that group talk about our research question, our research, our research, our whole secondary sources, primary sources, and the project. We have to take action and do a project that will will help people take action about it. Will help people like reflect on it. So we got into groups, and each one was sharing their own idea of a project, and we all were thinking like, yeah, I think that's a good idea, or maybe don't you think like this is a better idea? Like doing this will actually help you get that get that research really uh, get that like research purpose really take an action on people throughout this type of project. For example, my type of project on this that people helped me out was this Reddit post. Reddit is a website that it's a thread website, so a lot of people go inside of Reddit. They they read, they comment about how their what they think about certain things. For example, this is made on Reddit film scoring, which is film critics, what I was talking about. And I and this idea actually came to me by uh, a classmate, Maya, in my her name is Maya in my classroom. She told me that it was better for a comment box, a thread that will help people like talk about it. Maybe there will not be entirely like they'll not be entirely um, in the positive side of what I said, but some other people will actually maybe um, agree with into what I shared and what I said. And I didn't have any idea of that until I got into my feedback. Until I got feedback from my classmates. I really didn't have any any idea of what was I going to make. I presented my ideas and I told them, "Please help me. I don't know what to actually do. Like I was thinking about this and this, but I don't think it would be it would not like um give the message or like give the message really clearly. And eventually they told me about the comment box, the thread, and I started liking those ideas, and I actually did my project on it. So finally, to do a summary, a quick summary to everything, into peer feedback processes, um, I learned that number one, I don't have to be afraid into giving positive or negative feedback, because always giving positive feedback will not help the person you're trying to help, and always giving negative will actually get their hopes down. So try and have a balance in between those, like um, uh, tell them where their mistakes are, but also tell them, hey, you did really good in this part. um, Always have a balance in between those two, and always when you get feedback from people, always take it into the positive side, into, hey, they're trying to help me actually develop this whole thing. So rather than being angry about it, I think you should appreciate that they're helping you. For my writing processes, I want to go back into the crap sheet. That this helped me a lot. Having your information well organized before going to the actual research paper writing will help you a lot, because it helped me a lot, because having situation, claims, evidence, audience, and purpose all all categorized into each and every single one of the crap sheets helped me went into my helped me write the whole research paper really easily and really neatly. And also the writing process of introducing my secondary sources, something I never had done before, and citing citing the things that will help, citing the information that will mainly help my research question. It's really helpful from when you're developing it, the second part later on. And finally, for my research processes, number one, always know what trusty sources. Don't always depend on secondary sources, things you found on the internet. Go and make your own primary sources. Go out there, get your get experiments, surveys, observations, different types of researches. Get them done, and have a first-hand experience about what you're trying to explain into your research paper. And also, um, you have to know where to get your secondary sources from. Try and get them from educational pages, educational domains, and don't always trust into Google, Yahoo, or everything or something like that. Always go to the complicated stuff, because I know these articles are kind of complicated, are kind of long, are tedious, but if you read them through and you actually get to see everything the author is trying to express in this article, you can find a lot of similarities into this and what you are actually researching. And this was my final reflective video. Thank you.